Hi everyone and welcome to this Puppyhammer sizing guide. We're going to go over everything you will need to know today, from putting together your first puppy hammer to checking the fit of your current one. We're also going to go over general recommendations and information on total weight, total length, and also different types of rope and how they affect not only how you play with it, but also the fit and the longevity of your prop. So if you're just starting out with Puppyhammer, my first recommendation will be always to go get yourself a daytime practice size adjustable one. Getting the size of your Puppyhammer is quite difficult. It's a whole process, and it can also change with time as you figure out what is most comfortable to you. So when you go get yourself a fire one or some particular LED ones, they're going to be set to a particular length and you're not going to be able to adjust it. So making sure that you're happy with the size before you commit to one of those is super useful. Also, some people are tempted to go straight ahead and just get a fire one. Few disadvantages there. Once again, total length is set. Also, you're going to hit yourself a lot at the beginning, and fire ones hurt a tremendous amount. Also, Puppyhammer on fire is probably one of the most dangerous props out there, in my opinion. I'd been spinning fire for 15 years before I started Puppyhammer, and I still waited way over 6 months before I set it on fire, and I had loads of people around, and I still don't spin fire Puppyhammer on my own today. If you want up-to-date recommendations and discount codes, go check out my link tree. However, if you have some reason to go get yourself a non-size adjustable one, you've got your heart set on a particular practice one, or you want to go ahead and get yourself an LED one to begin with, there is a way to calculate your total size. You can't really do it just from your wingspan or your height or some formula like that. You need a bit of string. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on the bit of string. Ideally, you want something that is not very bouncy. It doesn't stretch, so you can get a proper, accurate read. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it over your neck. You're going to put it underneath your armpits and into your hand as such. We're going to do the same on the other side. So then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the length of this side correct. So how I'm going to hold it, it's going to go through my hand. I'm going to curl my fingers like that, and I'm going to put my thumb against here to pinch it. Then after that, we're going to want to come to about here. So we're going to want about 5 centimeters or 2 inches underneath the elbow. See, I've got my wrist nice and straight here whilst I'm measuring. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it tight. So I'm going to pull it very tight using both hands to literally pull it as tight as I can. And then I'm going to come and measure the other side. So normally what I would do is I'd have a bit of a longer bit of string and I'd tie a knot about 5 centimeters below here. I'd then measure it. This rope happens to be the correct total length already. So when people are sizing a Puppyhammer, what they'll generally say is you want your head to either stop at your elbow for a short one or start at your elbow for a long one. Anywhere in between is fine. So if you're ordering a non-size adjustable Puppyhammer, that is a good method you can use to calculate the total length. However, I still do recommend grabbing a size adjustable one, playing with it for a few months before you commit to a total length. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to mess up the nodes on this Puppyhammer, and then we're going to size it together. So I've well and truly messed up the nodes on this hammer, but obviously the first thing you're going to want to do is set the total length. So you're going to put on the hammer around your neck, underneath the armpits, down into the hands. We're going to curl the fingers and we're going to pinch it with our thumbs. So we pinch it here. Then we're going to pull it nice and tight. So what I'll do is I'll curl up my arms a little bit, grab the hammer, and I'll stretch out and I'll let the rope basically glide through my hand. So now I know I've got it nice and tight. Then when I do this, on this Puppyhammer, what you can see is that the heads are basically halfway down the elbow. So the center of the head matches my elbow, and this is a great starting length. So quite a few Puppyhammers will allow you to hold a bit of extra string inside of the head, and that's super useful if you want to lengthen again in the future. And obviously in the future, you can always shorten it and cut it off if you need to. So after you've got the total length of your hammer set, we're going to move on to the nodes. So these are nodes that I make and sell. I've got big ones for the poi nodes and I've got small ones for the shoulder nodes. This is a general good setup, especially if you're a beginner and don't know what you currently want. This is what I'd recommend. But if you go for lantern smith, I would just use some big plastic ones in place of both instead of going for their small metal ones. I'll talk about some different node setups depending on your type of play later. So what we're going to do is we're going to get them roughly in the right position, and we're going to put on the Puppyhammer. We're going to start with the shoulder nodes, and then we're going to put it on. We're going to try and get it roughly even. Yeah, that'll do. And then I'm going to move these nodes to about 1 inch or about 2 centimeters underneath my collarbones. So there are my collarbones and here are my nodes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off. Hopefully they don't slide about. And then I'm going to put my finger here and drape the Puppyhammer over it. Then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you how I do this. I'm going to rest the heads on the floor. This is going to help me get it nice and even. And then I come back over here and I can see it wasn't perfect. So I've got one a bit high and one a bit low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch that one up and pinch that one down. So now that they are at least even, and then I'm going to check again. And I'm going to adjust them until I'm happy, and then I'm going to screw them in. So what I've done here is I've screwed them in both halfway, and then we can just put it on again, do a little check, make sure that we're happy with it, do a last check to make sure that they're nice and even. So I'm going to balance the heads on the floor again, make sure that the nodes are at the same height, and then I'm going to commit. After that, we're going to do the poi nodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise them up, get them nice and even again. So now we can use this to make sure that they're even, not only just the heads. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them just a little bit past my wrist. So I've got the top of the node aligned with my wrist. I'm making sure that the rope is above my elbow here. And that is where we're going to give it a go to begin with. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to balance the heads on the floor. Obviously you want a slightly more even ground than this. And I've got this one too high and this one too low, so I'm going to pinch that one up. I'm going to pinch this one down until they match. Brilliant. And then I'm going to screw them in. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to check the fit. So I'm going to put it on nice and even. I'm going to make sure that they both sit just underneath my collarbone and then down here just below the wrist. Then for the proper check, what we're going to do is we're going to pinch again just above the nodes as such, and I'm going to stretch out my arms, and I can stretch them out, but it's tight. So that's perfect. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come inside of the nodes and pinch there. I'm going to try and stretch out my arms, and I can't. So that means that it is a perfectly fitting puppy hammer. So that is a great trick for, you've been spinning your puppy hammer for a couple number of months and you want to check the fit. You go outside of the nodes and you can, but it's tight. You go inside of the nodes and you can't stretch out your arms fully. So this is the sizing technique that I use when I'm making up somebody else's puppy hammer or I'm checking the fit of my own, and it provides a really nice balance between all of the different modes. So another few checks that you can use. So when you're going from, let's say, elbow mode to poi mode and you grab it, two options. You can either hold it like this, where we're using our thumb and our pointing finger to wedge the poi node, and this will allow pressure to be taken off the hands, and this should feel nice and comfortable. And as you move around doing poi, the main trick is making sure that this doesn't fall off your elbow. If it does fall off your elbow, it might be a little long and you might want to shorten your poi nodes. So the other technique is to hold it in your palm as such, grab it with your fingers, and then rest the rope over your pointing finger, curl it, and pinch it down with your thumb. So then you can really control it in poi mode. And once again, it should feel tight, but it should not slip off your hands, and you should have decent maneuverability, being able to stretch out in most directions. Puppy hammer is a proper compromise, and the most common mistake I'll see people do is they'll have a super long hammer so that their poi mode is the same length as their normal poi. So this has a few disadvantages. The first one being the other modes are going to be a lot harder to control, especially early on. The other one is that they're also going to be way more likely to hit the ground in shoulder mode and off body, and also off body horizontal is going to be much harder to deal with. The other reason, apart from just making sure that all of the modes are balanced nicely, is if you're very used to poi, making your poi feel a little bit less comfortable can help you move away from just sticking in poi mode and make sure that you're actually exploring all of the new modes that you have available to you. Let's start with some recommendations on weight. So most people run between 160 grams and 210 grams. Some people will go heavier than 210 grams, but basically nobody goes lighter than 160. If you go much lighter than 160, what you'll tend to find is you'll have to spin super fast to maintain momentum, and often your shoulder mode or your off body will just want to drop out the air unless you're absolutely slamming the speed. So I'd normally recommend between 170 and 190 for your first hammer, but it's really great to get a weight adjustable one. So you can maybe start at 170, maybe try 190 after you've done a month, or maybe even go above 200 later on. Going above 200 is also really good when you want to eventually move on to your fire puppy hammer. Right, let's move on to type of rope. So the three most common types of rope are Smithy rope, Dyneema, and Technora. Most people will start with a Smithy rope. It's nice and cheap, which means that you can buy yourself a second tether, and after you've punched a bunch of holes in your first one due to sizing changes, you can swap it out for a nice new fresh one without too much extra cost. So it doesn't use a special material really. What it does is its weave is all in the direction of the rope. And what this helps to do is it helps to reduce the friction, and friction tends to be our enemy with Puppyhammer. So the next rope on our list is Dyneema, and Dyneema reduces friction through material properties. It has a super low coefficient of friction, which makes it almost impossible to rope burn yourself on it, and it means it glides nicely over your skin without basically rubbing and causing a rash. So this is my preferred rope of play because I don't want to wear a hoodie the entire time, and I really enjoyed the low friction aspect of it, and it feels super soft. So the last rope we're going to talk about is Technora. So Technora is the same molecule as Kevlar, so it's fireproof, and we tend to use this on fire hammers. So the other thing people will do for a fire hammer is they'll use a Dyneema center, and then they will splice on Technora for the ends, because Technora is fireproof for fire spinning, and Dyneema is fire resistant and a lot smoother to play with. So the other comparison we can make is how the ropes stretch and also how they change length over time. So Smithy rope has about 2 to 3 centimeters of stretch to it. The advantage is it can be quite forgiving. It provides a spring between the head and your movements. So if your movements are a little bit off, it can kind of help you compensate for that. However, I personally prefer ropes with 0 stretch as I find them more responsive, and I like being told when my form isn't perfect. So the other thing to note is this rope will not change length with time. Smithy rope will stay the same length, which means you won't need to keep adjusting your hammer. However, these two ropes, the more you use them, the shorter they will get. They might only shrink by a couple of centimeters, but you will need to keep readjusting it every now and again. So the other thing to note is that most people will use a 6mm rope or a 1/4 inch. Most nodes are designed for that size. Some people like to go a little bit thinner. Some people will like to go a lot wider, up to 8mm or 10mm, especially on fire hammers. And that takes us nicely over to nodes. So I still use large poi nodes and medium-sized shoulder nodes on my practice hammer. That is because I use a Dyneema, it has low friction, and it's quite hard to grab onto without the nodes. However, on my fire hammer, because it's a much thicker rope, I will use a medium or a large shoulder node, and I will go nodeless on the poi nodes. Other people will often want to downsize their nodes as they go along and get more comfortable with the hammer, either going medium on both or even smaller. Some people will even go nodeless, or they'll just have their shoulder nodes but go no nodes on their poi nodes. So dropping down the node sizes is a common practice, and it tends to be for people that are either more experienced with the hammer, they don't tend to find the large nodes super useful for grip, or they use a lot of rope dart style moves and they don't want these massive nodes continuously hitting their hand. So I hope this Puppyhammer sizing guide has been useful to you. Feel free to drop me a message if you need any more advice on buying a Puppyhammer or sizing it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.